at the University of Montana, and this is Riverfest. And Riverfest, as you all know, is a community celebration of water, wilderness, and wildflowers, brought to you by the Wilderness Institute, the Montana Natural History Center, and the Missoula County Weed District, along with a whole bunch of federal agency and nonprofit partners, including the Sierra Club, the Audubon Society, the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center, the Aldo Leopold Wilderness Research Institute, the Forest Service, who am I forgetting? Wilderness Watch. No, I have to look at my cheat sheet. And the Rocky Mountain CESU Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Unit. And so thank you everyone for working so hard to put this event on. We also have a whole bunch of sponsors who have helped make this event possible by donating either money or materials, and they are listed on the placards up front. So thank you everyone. And before we actually get started on the walk, I'm going to give you a little bit of logistical information to make this run smoothly, and then Connie Myers will provide a few inspirational words as a send-off. And so we're going to be walking just about a mile, and we're going to head right out left here, and then around and up the Caras Park driveway. Then we're going to turn right on Front Street, walk along Front, cross over the Higgins Street Bridge this way. We're going to turn down the driveway where Boone and Crockett is and walk along the Riverfront Trail through the Clark Fork Natural Park, and then back up on Orange Street Bridge and over Orange Street Bridge, and then back along Front and down to Caras Park. There are directional signs along the way. I don't think you'll lose your way. I think you probably all know how to get back if you do get lost. And the llamas, Dave Harmon will be leading the walk with 3 llamas. And so you can also use the llamas as a guide to know where to go. You should all know that you should stay a little bit back from the llamas, just at, maybe 10 feet or so that the llamas don't get spooked by a big crowd right after them. And when you get back, reconvene right here. This is where you will get your goodies, all your fun free prizes, and there's a lot of neat stuff that people have donated for walkers, and so please come right up to the stage, and we'll be handing out posters, stickers, and all kinds of good stuff in these bags, so please come up. And then we're going to have Debbie Austin of the Lolo National Forest give a short talk on wilderness and the 40th anniversary right here. So after the walk, come on up, reconvene, and we'll spend a few minutes here before all the festivities begin. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Connie Myers. Connie is the founding director of the Interagency Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center, and she now works for the agencies, bringing people together through partnerships to keep wilderness wild.
Thank you, Lori, and thank all of you for turning out on this cloudy, cold day to celebrate water, wilderness, and wildflowers. And it was 40 years ago this month that our nation became the first country in the entire world to define and designate wilderness areas through legislation. When the Wilderness Act was passed in 1964, we set aside, we protected forever some of the most natural and undisturbed areas in America. And in doing that, we established the National Wilderness Preservation System, which has grown now from 9 million to 106 million acres. You can find wilderness in 44 of 50 states. And how incredibly fortunate we are here in Missoula to be absolutely, literally surrounded by such a wilderness-rich environment. We have access to some of the most incredible recreational opportunities that wilderness has to provide. Let's see, from hiking to hunting, from skiing to stargazing, from, what were the H's? I did the H's. Horseback riding, thank you. We have access to all sorts of incredible wilderness recreational opportunities, but you know what? One thing that the wilderness provides that very few other places can is solitude. The opportunity to get away from our fast-paced, industrialized society, to reconnect with ourselves, with our community, and with the land itself. And here's a really amazing thing about wilderness. Even if you never, ever set one foot in it, you benefit from it directly. Just up here to our north, the Rattlesnake Wilderness. Just down here to the south, the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. From these wilderness areas flow the clean water that you and I drink. Just up the road here, a little ways, the Bob Marshall Wilderness is one of the largest contiguous wilderness areas in the lower 48 states. It provides the most significant migration corridor for grizzly bear, elk, deer, and it is one of the very few remaining places where we can find pure genetic strains of native West Slope cutthroat trout. And this environmental diversity is incredibly important to the health of our community. So, we are here this morning to celebrate both the immediate and the long-lasting benefits that wilderness is to our community, to our citizens, and to our world. We're here this morning to celebrate the legacy that wilderness is to our children and the phenomenal, uniquely American heritage that it is to us. So, everybody, let's get up. Let's go celebrate and have a walk for wilderness.
On the hike now? Ready? Where's that one? Let's go. Ready to go. Let's go. Llamas.
She's not really a leash dog. You can go. You can't see the head of the llama. No, we're not. Don't wait that far ahead.
right away. This time shows are Saturday to Saturday.
Hi there.
So I'd like to welcome Debbie Austin. Debbie is the Lolo National Forest Supervisor, and Debbie spent most of her childhood in Northern California riding horses in the mountains near her home. She has degrees in wildlife management and biology. She started with the National Forest System in 1978 and has worked in a variety of positions, including as a firefighter, as a fish and wildlife biologist, as a range conservationist, as a district ranger, and a forest supervisor. And she's worked in 8 national forests and in a variety of wilderness areas, including the Ansel Adams, the Alpine Lakes, the John Muir, the Anaconda Pentler, and the Scapegoat. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Debbie Austin to talk a little bit about the 40th anniversary of the Wilderness Act. So please welcome Debbie.
Well, thank you, and it's wonderful to see so many people out here this morning, and I'm just so glad that it stopped raining. Although a walk in the rain isn't bad either. As I was walking this morning, I started thinking about what would the world be like without wilderness. And it was really hard for me to imagine that, because wilderness is such a critical and important part of the United States and of the world, actually. And also as I was walking, I was thinking about those people back in the 1950s and the 1960s that came up with this concept of wilderness, and imagining how visionary they were. If you go back and you think about what was happening in the world in this country in the 1960s, it really wasn't much about what was happening out in the wildlands. It was about a lot of other very critical issues. And I just really want to thank the people that came before us that had that vision and that understanding of how important wilderness would be to all of us in the future. And I especially feel that way when I look around and I see all the children in the audience. And just imagine the legacy that we and those before us will be leaving for those children, so they'll be able to enjoy and to learn from and explore that wilderness that we have been so fortunate to do. Most of us, when we think about wilderness, we think about recreation and we think about hiking and backpacking, and oftentimes we think about rejuvenating and finding solitude and reconnecting with nature. That's certainly one of the most important parts of wilderness. It's certainly why I enjoy being out in the wilderness, and I have been fortunate enough and very thankful that I actually get to work in the wilderness, which is a wonderful thing. But wilderness is also important for a lot of other reasons. It's an area that's pretty much unchanged by people. And so it's an area that provides, as Connie was saying, the clean water that we drink. It's a place where we can see clean air, breathe clean air, see the stars that we don't get to see in the lights of the city. It's an area where we can research things that haven't been changed, and we can see how the natural processes work and perhaps learn from that and provide a better life for people and the wildlife and fish. It does provide wildlife habitat and fisheries habitat for species such as the charismatic grizzly bear, and that's one that we all are well aware of. But it also provides habitat for the little tiny creatures that we never even think of that are critically important to the workings of our entire ecosystems. And so when you're out hiking in the wilderness, don't just be thinking about the grizzly bears and the elk, but think about all those other little critters that you might not even see. You pick up a leaf or a rock and you'll be amazed at what you can see out there. And wilderness provides that untouched, unchanged habitat for us to enjoy and to learn from and just to be. Another important part of wilderness, whether we like to think so or not, is it really helps the economies of communities that are around wilderness areas. They're very much an attraction. People have the need and the desire to go into these wilderness areas. And it's just a wonderful thing for places to be able to provide that opportunity for people from across the country and across the world. So I'm not going to spend too much time up here talking. I just wanted to share with you how important I feel wilderness is, and to thank all of you for coming out and showing your support for wilderness. Again, I think it's one of the most important legacies that we leave for our children and our children's children. And I'm so glad that you came out today. And again, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the activities. I think we have a lot going on this morning. And thank you again for coming.
We are really, really lucky to have a chance to talk with Bill Worf. Bill was on the interagency committee that wrote the regulations implementing the Wilderness Act in 1965, just after the act was passed in 1964. Bill was also the Forest Service first wilderness program leader, a position he held until 1969 when he moved here to Missoula, Montana to work as the regional director for wilderness, recreation, and lands. Bill co-founded Wilderness Watch in 1989 and currently serves on the advisory board for Wilderness Watch. And Bill has really dedicated his life to making sure that wilderness was managed in a way that is in keeping with the Wilderness Act, the spirit and intent of the act, and really is managed in a way that keeps it wild. And so it's just a wonderful opportunity to talk with Bill. And so please join us. We'll just pull up some chairs and create like a little semicircle up here to talk with Bill Worf about wilderness. So please welcome Bill Worf.
What is wilderness? Wilderness is the ultimate historic resource. Wilderness is the resource that the Pilgrims stepped into when they stepped off the Mayflower and Plymouth Rock. And it blanketed the nation, or at least most of the nation, from sea to shining sea. Of course, there were some holes in wilderness at that time. There were some places where the first Americans cultivated, had villages, and these were holes in the wilderness at that time. But we moved ahead and conquered most of the wilderness. Now we have some pieces set aside that are to remain forever alive. And one other thing that I want to say before I open up the questions is the whole idea of, well, Congress make the wilderness out of some of these lands that are not very wild, they're pretty well trammeled. Does that mean that we manage all the rest of the wilderness so it comes to that standard? And Montana Senator John Melcher gave me a lesson on that. When I first came to the region, one of the primitive areas that were to be studied as a possible addition to the system was the Mission Mountains primitive area. Mission Mountains Wild Area, I guess it was called at the time. So it was a pretty wild piece of country, but the Forest Service, in fighting spruce bark beetle, had made several clear-cuts up into the edge of the wilderness, and that's the north-south, the east boundary was a straight north-south line. And so when we sent the recommendation to Congress, we dutifully went up there and went to the edge of these clear-cuts and went around the clear-cut, and then went on, stayed with the boundary until we got to the next clear-cut, up around the clear-cut. It made it look kind of funny. So when it got to Congress, Senator Melcher came out and he said, I don't understand this boundary at all. He said, why do we do that? And so I said, well, Senator, let's get in an airplane and go look. And so we got into one of Bud's fire airplanes and took a ride up over there, and I showed him, I had him fly right down the line, and I showed him where these clear cuts, and they were only 4 or 5 years old at that time. And so we got back and landed at the airport out here, and I said, well, Senator, do you see why we didn't do anything, we didn't depart from the edge of those clear cuts of one bit. And the clear cuts are out, and it was my idea that if you put those clear cuts in, that that would serve to somebody else to say, some future manager would come along and say, well, look at what Congress made in the Mission Mountains. They made it quite clear cut in, so it qualified for wilderness. So if we're short of timber someplace, let's go ahead and invade the wilderness. We got it, because we had a lot of timber inside the wilderness. And so when we landed, I said, Senator, do you see why we did that? And he said, yes, I understand it. But he said, let me tell you, Congress is going to put the line right back where it was. And those clear cuts are going in. And I lost my cool. I said, Senator, how in the hell can you say that those clear cuts meet the definition of wilderness as being untrammeled, where the evidence of man's work is substantially unnoticeable? He said, cool down a minute, Bill. He said, "You're reading the wrong definition." And I said, "Right here in section," I had the act with me, and I said, "Right here in section 2, it tells you that the leisure to be untrammeled, the evidence of man is to be substantially unnoticed." And he said, "Yeah," but he said, "You want to go to section 3 of the act. This definition is in section 2. He said, "Go to the definition in section 3. And I was incredulous, you know. I said, "But Senator, there isn't any definition, section 3. He said, "Now you got the message." He said, "Congress will make it out of any, and put anything we think deserves wilderness designation, and we'll put it in, and you manage it by section 2. So that was, all of a sudden the light came on, and I realized that you couldn't go by what was designated. You had to take each individual wilderness and manage it toward that definition in section 2. With that, let me throw it open to questions, and I'm legally blind, so I might need some help here to have somebody.
What is your title again?
Right now, I'm a member, a life member of Wilderness Watch. I founded the Wilderness Watch, but at the time that I retired, I was Director of Recreation, Wilderness, and Lands here in the Northern Region of the Forest Service. And when the policy was developed, I was Wilderness Project Leader in the Washington office. Yes?
What about the idea of a buffer zone? A buffer zone because right now, for example, they cut right up the wilderness, and also the tribal lands now can go into Forest Service lands and cut what they want if they feel there's a threat of fire. Everything is going along because they didn't want the Forest Service lands burning over into tribal lands. They now have a permit, or rather a permission to do this type of thing, and we really have no buffer zones anymore.
Well, you know, the whole question of buffer zones was one that we wrestled with a lot, and the decision by the Forest Service and the decision by Congress was that there would not be any buffer zones, that we would manage as wilderness up to the line, and that there would not be a buffer zone. Now, I don't know the situation that you're referring to, but I doubt that the tribe has any authority to go in and cut in the wilderness, in National Forest wilderness.
It was in the paper, they could cut into U.S. Forest Service lands regardless of the category.
Well, we better let Wilderness Watch take that one on, because I don't believe it's legal.
Well, if the Forest Service land is not the same as what you're talking about.
If it's designated wilderness, just national forest, that's a different situation. Now again, somebody's going to have to help me because I don't see hands going up.
I thought I heard you say that the areas not designated as wilderness are not secure. I wonder if you'd comment on that.
Yes, the reason that they're not secure is that there are an awful lot of people, both inside and outside the agencies, that haven't read Section 2A of the Wilderness Act and Section 4B of the Wilderness Act. And we've got an awful lot of folks that want to use wilderness for all kinds of purposes other than to maintain an enduring resource of wilderness. Now, there is a resource of wilderness. That's an RO wildness, evidence of man's work is substantially unnoticeable. That's the resource of wilderness. It's not a recreation area. It's not a wildlife sanctuary or wildlife management area. It's wilderness. And so we've got folks that are wanting to do things in wilderness that will lead to the degradation of the wilderness character. For example, the National Park Service went through minimum tool analysis at Cumberland Island, the Cumberland Island National Seashore off the coast of Georgia. And they decided that they had to get experts through the wilderness up to the north end of the island to do some work on some historic buildings that were up there. And they did some rationalization, which I don't agree with, but they decided they had to take a jeep, take a couple of people through the wilderness up to that north end. And then they went a step further, and they said, as long as we're doing that, we do that about once a week. We go up there. Why not take the public with us? So we'll take a 15-passenger van and drive through the wilderness. No more, in their view, no more impact on wilderness than if they would for the Park Service people that were riding. And so they started advertising that if you want to go we got 13 seats every week that we'll rent out to people to go to the village at the north end. Well, Wilderness Watch didn't agree, and we took them to court. The judge in Georgia didn't think, he thought it was a bunch of damn silliness, you know. It makes any difference whether it's a 15-passenger van or a Jeep pickup. So we lost in the state court. We took it to the Court of Appeals, the 10th District in Washington, D.C. The judge, the Court of Appeals agreed with Wilderness Watch. Said, you know, the fact that there is a difference. The difference, the impact on the people that they meet along the way, and the people that are riding in the van itself. And of course, once you start down that road, if there's more people sign up for the van than there is seats in the van, well, the next thing would be a Greyhound bus, you know. So that's why wilderness is not secure.
We saw a movie a couple nights ago, Arctic Dance, about Marty and Willis Berry, and one of the things they talked about was how at the passage of the Wilderness Act in the House, there was only one single vote against the Wilderness Act. And so it really struck me how much support there was for the act at that time. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how that support was mobilized or where it was coming from, and then how is that different today, the kind of support we see maybe in Congress?
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, when the Wilderness Act passed, there's been 8 years of debate, and it was the original act that was introduced was written by a gentleman by the name of Howard Zonizer. He was the executive director of the Wilderness Society at the time, and you'll be hearing from Bud Moore. Sorry, Bud, you'll be hearing from Bud too. But Stewart Brandborg, who took over from Howard Zonizer, but Howard was a real gentleman, and really believed in the idea of wilderness, and he worked with Congress, both sides of the aisle, and the first bill was introduced in the House by a Republican from Pennsylvania by the name of John Saylor. And it was introduced in the Senate by a Democrat from Minnesota, Humphrey. And when it passed, there was only one dissenting vote in the House of Representatives, and there were 12 dissenting votes in the Senate. But gosh, that's as close to being a bipartisan mandate as you can get. I don't think Congress in the whole history of Congress has ever done anything quite as striking as that. So, I don't know. You know, there's a tendency for people to try to politicize wilderness. I don't agree. I think that most of the folks in the nation, whether Republicans or Democrats, agree that there are some areas that ought to be saved. And America has a love with the old stuff, our history, our roots, where our roots are. And once they understand it, I think there will be support all the way through, regardless of politics. And I think the reason that this has happened is that the folks that are responsible for educating the American people about the meaning and value of wilderness have dropped the ball. And those are the managers, the folks that are managing the land, from the U.S. Forest Service, from the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Park Service. Those are the folks that have dropped the ball and not kept the public aware of why we have a wilderness system. What's the value of wilderness? Why should it be maintained forever? As a result, my concern, as I said, is that this 107 million acres is in serious jeopardy right now. But it's not the fault of politics. It's the fault of people that have not lost sight of what the reason we have a wilderness system. At the risk of stepping outside of 101 here, I'm going to suggest that we'll never achieve full protection and full potential of the National Wilderness Preservation System until we have one person that can be held accountable and responsible for the maintaining this enduring resource of wilderness.
You bet, the President of the United States.
You bet.
Right?
But he needs a right hand.
Well, but you got to be careful who you vote for, right?
Well, that's right, but I'm not here to talk about whoever we vote for. We ought to be urging that person to establish a national wilderness service that's headed by one individual who eats, thinks, and sleeps wilderness. And it can be held accountable for the condition of the wilderness system. We're going to have a lot of changes in politics, but when I say one person, I think we need one person that the president, whoever he is, can hold accountable for the management of an enduring resource of wilderness. I hadn't intended to say that, but you opened the door. Did that stir up any questions?
The other evening, I went to the Missoula Children's Theater. The Sierra Club sponsored an event, and I couldn't understand why we have to write to this guy down in Utah I thought he was working for us. This guy, whoever, whatever his title be. Why are we writing to this guy to beg the Forest Service people to make sure that the wilderness, or what was it about roads? About
Roadless areas.
roadless areas. Why do we have to beg the Forest Service? I mean, who's he working for? For us or for warehousing? I want to know this.
He's working for us.
Well, then if he is, why are we begging him or asking him to quash this?
Well, one other thing that one of the, there's two different things. The roadless rule was established to keep lands roadless. It was not established to designate wilderness. Out of those roadless lands would come a designation of wilderness. So it's not the management of wilderness that we're talking about there. It's the roadless rule. And the organization that I started and am still a life member of, we don't get involved in the designation of new wildernesses. We haven't gotten involved in the roadless rule as an organization in any great strength. We think we ought to keep them that roadless resource. But they're two different issues. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and in this whole tent, in this whole gathering here, we need all of these people, and particularly those folks that went on the hike that carried in their arms their parents. Those are the people that we need to maintain an enduring resource of wilderness. And, the Wilderness Act says that it's Congress's policy to maintain an enduring resource of wilderness for present and future generations. That's why we cannot allow it to diminish, or we can't damage wilderness now for our benefit without taking away from those who come after us. And that's one of the reasons that I and Bud Moore and Stewart Brandborg are spending our remaining years fighting for wilderness. Thanks a lot.
Raptors of the Rockies program here. We, meaning me and the birds, have been here in 102-degree weather. Once was a snowstorm. One was 50-mile-an-hour winds. This is only the second time in the rain. And then one time there was an entire bongo troupe playing drums behind us the whole time. So we've had every combination in the world here before. But I want to welcome you to Riverfest. Did anybody want to take a hike today? Anybody? Hardcores. You guys are so cool. Hardcore people. I slept until 9 o'clock. I was thinking of you when I woke up. But anyway, I want to thank Brad. I want to thank the Montana Natural History Center, of course, all the sponsors that have done this event, and for inviting Raptors of the Rockies here to do a little program. This will be about an hour total. And I brought 5 hawks. I have brought a hawk, a falcon, an eagle, and 2 owls. And the last owl you'll get to pet. And you can also take pictures. Makes great Christmas cards, the small child petting the owl. So the Raptors of the Rockies program has been around for 16 years. And we've been doing educational programs across western Montana. This is program number 912. Yeah, thanks. So theoretically, 78 more and we're done, right? When you get to 1,000, no way. Because there's a golden eagle in this box that could easily live another 20 years. So this is, they say that you should be committed. Yeah, that you should be committed. Definitely for doing this program. I think they mean like you should be in a mental institution. But the program Raptors of the Rockies actually used to be called Birds of Prey on Display. Isn't that silly? So we called it Raptors of the Rockies, got a nonprofit 501c3, and we've talked to about 80,000 people in 112 schools. So this word raptor, I love it. All the people say enraptured with raptors, or raptor rapture, or something like that. But my favorite is when people ask me if I'm the rapture lady. And I say, yes, I am. Thank you. I am the rapture lady. It's amazing how many people still confuse these words. Now, the word raptor means seize and carry away. So the group of birds are 2 orders of birds. The hawks, just to put it simply, the hawks, the owls. 2 orders of birds that make up the raptors. And these are the birds that really are exciting. People remember seeing raptors, and people stop me all the time. Oh my God, I saw this osprey catch a fish, or I heard an owl or something. You remember seeing these birds. So they're very exciting. They have a very difficult lifestyle. The way I started doing this was when I was a kid. I used to rehab raccoons. And I had screech owls that would fly around my room. My mom would come in and get my laundry. These owls, she'd have to like wave her arms. That was when I was about 13 years old. So I came here. I got a degree in zoology. This is an excellent zoology department, by the way. And moved to a ranch in Clinton. Now, you don't go to Petland and buy a rough-legged hawk. You never see these birds for sale, right? As a matter of fact, you can't even have their feathers. So, in order to keep these birds, I have 4 federal permits. The first one is a rehab permit. This hawk came in with a broken wing. We realized we couldn't let him go, so he joined us at our possession permit. That's the second permit. Third permit, eagle exhibition. There's an eagle in there. Wait till you see this bird. The 4th permit is a falconry permit. That's this bird, Sidley, the peregrine falcon, and I hunt with her. So I have 4 federal permits. So let's start with, oh man, there's a couple leaks in here. We're going to start with one of our smaller birds. Here we go. Now, these birds they do not live in this box, okay? These birds all have great big enclosures. The good news is we moved to the Bitterroot, and so now I'm a Bitterrooter. By the way, if you're a Bitterrooter, you leave your turn signal on the whole time you're in the Bitterroot in Valley County. Just leave it going the whole time. Just confuse everyone. Anyway, we moved to the Bitterroot and we built all new enclosures with a local grant. We got a grant and built all new hawk buildings. So these birds all live in these great big outdoor spacious buildings on the Bitterroot River with a great view, nice, lots of sun. And this bird is also a Bitterrooter that wasn't using his turn signal. And we'll see our first one here. And she's going to jump around for a second before she stands on the glove. There, like that. Just like that. Here we go. Come on, come on. Come on. There we go. There we go. And this bird is very spirited and high-strung. Come on, stand up. There we go. Any ornithologist here? Boy, look at the sharp shins on that hawk. What? Anybody? Sharp-shinned hawk, right. This bird's name is Margot. Margot's named after a friend of mine's mom. Margot got hit by a car in the Bitterroot, not using her turn signal, And instead of being able to, no, but when birds fly, it's not like in the cartoons, they don't go like this. They make a cup and they pull themselves through the air, just like swimming, just like you're swimming. Get a whole gymnasium of kids swimming for you. They'll do that for about 10 minutes. But what happens when a bird breaks a wing, it's usually near a joint, it causes the joint to be so stiff that he can't flex that wing joint anymore. And so consequently, Margot here can't make a cup, pull herself through the air. She was 6 months old when we got her. That bird would have died. Now, raptors have to find, catch, and kill prey every day, right? They don't just go to their refrigerator, get like a microwave burrito, or go like to Ollie's 3 for $1 hot dogs. They have to find, catch, and kill prey. And so the raptors, the hawks, the owls, the eagles, the ospreys, have a huge mortality rate. Their first year, most of them die. Sadly, 60 to 70% die their first year. That's even without people around. So anyway, what would have happened to Margot, she's made this mistake. She would have died. She would have been taken out of the breeding population. Instead, she joined our program. Now, this is a true hawk, or an accipiter. The accipiters are a sharp-shinned hawk. They eat entirely birds. That's all this bird eats. You will have these hanging around your bird feeder. Can you say, smorgasbord, smorgasbord? That's what a bird feeder is, okay? You're attracting all this food in, and the accipiters, like sharp-shinned hawks, merlins over the winter, pygmy owls over the winter, will use that bird feeder as a buffet. So they all, the accipiters eat birds, but sharp-shinneds, that's all they eat. Cooper's hawk's another bird, a medium-sized bird. By the way, I still have my Cooper's hawk. 16 years we've had her. Alice the Cooper's hawk. Get it? Yeah, thanks. I thought that was so funny 20 years ago. But Alice is a medium-sized bird, and then the largest accipiter is a goshawk. So they go from highly migratory to halfway migratory. And these are the true hawks. So the raptors all have great vision. They have 5 times more cells in their eye than we have, so they can see so much better. Their brains are faster. Now, have you ever heard someone say bird brain? You're a bird brain. Well, birds, when they fly, are they bumping into each other and crashing into stuff? No. Their brains are so much faster than ours that they can process this information. We can see 20 images per second. Films and cartoons are 25 images per second that they play. Birds can see 70 to 80 images per second. So you should see me try to catch her when I go in the building. I'll get really close. She doesn't jump in the box, folks. And I'll get right up and bang, away she goes. So their brains are so much faster than ours. So Margot is the accipiter, the true hawk, huge mortality rate. Now, these birds are called sharp-shinned hawks because they have a sharp leading edge on their tarsus, or the front of their leg. That is the stupidest name I have ever heard, okay? Like you're seeing this bird fly by and you're going, wow, is the leading edge of the tarsus pointy and sharp? No, you're not saying that. What you're looking for in a Sharpie is a square tail, a round head, and short round wings for bombing through the woods. And that's what the accipiters all have. This long tail for steering, short round wings. And her eyes are gradually going to turn bright red, and that's how you can tell the age of these birds. She's in her adult plumage, and eventually she'll have a bright red eye. So, is this sharp-shinned hawk out there trophy hunting? Is she going, I am going to get the smartest, the biggest, the best grosbeak that guy over there has at his bird feeder? Is that what they're doing? No. They're going, I'm going to get the stupid, weak, injured, dumb, stupid bird that isn't paying attention. The bird that's going, look at the pretty sky. Okay, now that's what these birds are doing, is they're weeding out the populations of birds in the wild. Now, if we had a pair of robins, everybody here loves robins. We had a pair of robins in this tent. In 10 years, with no mortality, we'd have 19 million robins, okay? So what they're doing is they're weeding out the population of birds, a very difficult lifestyle. This bird eats chicken. Does anybody tie flies here? Fly fish? Oh, come on. Yeah, come on. What's a hackle? You know what a hackle is. It's the plume on a rooster, right? Well, when you breed chickens, do you just get roosters? No, you get all these pesky female chickens too. So, what she gets to eat are 8-week-old chickens that are sexed as females. We don't want to grow them, the hackle farmer says, because they don't have the long plumes. So he goes through once a year. This is great. I'd love to be there. No, I wouldn't. I'd love to be there for that. Okay, you're a female. You don't have a comb on your beak. Pop your little head, put you in a bag. 50 in a bag, 700 in that Subaru about 3 months ago. okay? If you're a male, we're going to save you, let your plumes grow nice and long, and then cut your head off and use you later on. And that's just a harsh reality. But that's what these birds eat, are hackle chickens. So these birds don't have to find, catch, or kill prey, so they can have a very long lifespan. Accipiters kind of burn out quickly, but a friend of mine had a red-tailed hawk for 36 years. Okay, so they have a long, long lifespan. Aren't you a good girl? Now, one of the things that accipiters show off, better than any birds, is a thing called reverse sexual dimorphism. That means that the male is smaller than the female, okay? Now this is the most extreme example of reverse sexual dimorphism. This is a male sharp-shinned hawk, okay? Now he's flying near the nest. He's bringing in small songbirds. He's feeding the mom. The mom is sitting on the nest, incubating 4 or 5 eggs. She's molting. She's getting all that over with. She's sitting tight. She isn't hunting for a while. The male's doing all the feeding, right? And then the young, they get about 2 weeks old. And they're going, Dad, you ain't cutting it, son. We need some bigger food. So out comes the female. Now look at the size difference. This is a male, this is a female, okay? Sharp-shinned hawk. Now, this bird has to mate with this bird, and she eats birds. And what's he? A bird. Don't you love thinking about that? I do. So this is a reverse sexual dimorphism, most extreme in accipiters. These are skins that are in traveling trunks. Teachers or groups, you can rent these from us or the Montana Natural History Center for 2 weeks at a time. It's a great big trunk filled with skins, lesson plans, books, the whole thing. Now the next bird, I had a special request from Brad to bring this bird. And so remember, this is smaller than a female. He is a very popular bird for raptor programs. There we go. And we're going to get, this guy has he's a little Jess problem here. And get his Jesses out. There we go. There we go. Oh, come on. Oh, come on, everybody. Oh, thank you. Boy, you guys are falling behind there. By the way, I always tell this story, but I do programs for Japanese students at the university. And when they see the bird, they all go, "Aye." So that's what they say. Everybody loves a small owl. Now, this is not a baby owl. This is an adult male northern pygmy owl. And his name is .com. Dot because he's small and calm because he's calm. And we've had 3 pygmy owls over the years. This is the most mellow pygmy owl I have ever seen. It's not a baby. We've had him for probably 5 or 6 years. And he lives in a building next to the nocturnal small version, which is called a saw-whet owl. So we have a saw-whet owl, a nocturnal mouse eater, diurnal bird eater. So this is a whole different kind of a notion that we think of is a daytime bird-eating owl. And this bird can eat birds 2 to 3 times his weight. How does he do that? Flies to the bird feeder, grabs that grosbeak that isn't paying attention, and squeezes it with his feet. Excuse me. And so after he's squeezing this bird and killed it, can he fly away with it? No. So what he does is he drags that bird underneath the bush, underneath your car, somewhere out of the line of sight of kleptoparasites. Now, kleptoparasites are sharp-shinned hawks. They're cruising around. They're going, I'm going to steal from that pygmy owl. I'm going to steal the bird that bird just killed. Or better, I'm going to kill the pygmy owl, steal its bird, eat them both. Okay? Now, that's a fact of life. It's called kleptoparasitism. So what the pygmy owl will do, it'll drag that underneath the bush, and I want you to look at the back of a pygmy owl's head. What's it look like he has on the back of his head? Eyes. Looks like he has eyes on the back of his head. So when he's plucking that bird, I've seen films of this. They flip their head back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so the kleptoparasite's looking down. He's going, oh, I can't steal from that bird. He's looking right at me. You see how that works? Now, Marcia Dunn on Pea Green Boat told the listeners that bus drivers have eyes in the back of their head, and parents do too, right? Parents do, and teachers do, of course. So this is a really good adaptation that the pygmy owls have. And this is a full-grown bird. They are full-grown and flying at like 35 days old, 40 days old at least. So they don't get bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. This guy eats 2 to 3 mice every day. Now, you guys ever eat like the frosting off the cupcake first? You ever do that? .com and all of our owls eat the heads off the mice first. And then they do something called caching. They'll take the little hindquarters and they'll cache them or put them in a different place and go back and eat those later on. So if you go in .com's building in the morning, put three dead mice in there, go back in the evening and there's little hindquarters all around in there. Where do I get my mice? I used to pay 50 cents a piece. It'd be like, okay, are you going to eat the whole thing? All right, I'm taking it away. You're going to eat it? You got to eat the whole thing. Now I get the mice donated from a lab, and it's a genetics lab, and we're very, very happy to get these mice. We get 4 or 5 shipments a year. That Subaru filled to the ceiling with mice the week after I bought it. We're going, hallelujah, cruise control, and 5,000 dead mice. That makes me so happy. So anyway, we couldn't possibly raise enough mice to feed them. So this bird eats like a bird. In other words, he eats half his body weight every day. Now, could you do that? Could you eat 200 quarter-pounders every day? There's a guy at Hellgate High School, I swear, he can, but normal people can't. So these birds eat like a bird means they eat half their body weight every day. None of the birds need live food. They all get dead food. So there's our small owl. These are the ones that go, let's see. Sounds like backing up a truck, right? And we'll have them in the valleys in Missoula. Not right now, but in the winter, they'll leave, altitudinally, they'll leave the high mountains, come down into the valleys, hang out at your bird feeder. If it bothers you, quit feeding your birds for a few days. They'll go over to your house and eat your birds. So that's what we have at the pygmy owl. Good boy. Good boy. .com also was hit by a car. Now, did anybody see Monty Turner on Tuesday? Somebody did. Oh, come on. We had this bird live on the air. And I went on Monty Turner, and they were having a little technical difficulty, so I was late. I got there at 6, okay? And, you know, I'm not a real morning person. So I got there, and I got this bird out, and they go like, you know, do like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I took his leash, and I took his ball. He ran around on the floor at Monty Turner. If you can just picture this, there we go. This guy has never been to Caras Park before. Come here. Come on. And he's in here. This is the most playful bird I've ever seen. Come here. What are you doing? He's got a big tangled mess on because he's playing in his kennel. What are you doing? Come on, Hans. We just want him to walk out and check it out. Come here. Come here. He's playing with that. Oh, there we go. What are you doing, Ansel? What are you doing? You playing? Look at your ball. Your ball. Can you all see this bird? I'll put him on a glove in a second, or on my hand. But this bird is this is our latest resident. And here we go. Come on. There. Wow, what a bird. Now, people can guess what kind of bird this is, but I'll have to tell you, because unless you're a falconer, you wouldn't even know this bird exists. Daddy was a gerfalcon, Mommy was a peregrine. So we have an artificially inseminated mom that produces what we call a black ger-peregrine hybrid. And why would you do that? Because peregrine falcons are the fastest birds in the world. And they get up, they do a thing when you hunt with them, which my bird is just learning to do. It's called waiting on. It means they go up high, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 feet, and they follow you. And you can just hear their little bells, ding, 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 and they follow you. That's what a peregrine does. Why would you breed them with a gerfalcon? Because gerfalcon is the most powerful, huge falcon in the world. So you get a peregrine ger hybrid. This is a black phase, because Dad was a black bird, and you have a fast little bird that's very, very loyal and a good little hunter. Unfortunately, this guy is blind in his right eye. Now, how did that happen? That was a birth defect that they discovered at about 2 weeks. And the breeders down in Sheridan, Wyoming, this is a hotbed of falconers in Sheridan. I went down there, and God, I was just like, wow, that's Bob Berry. Wow, that's Dan Conkle. All these the icons of the falcon world, breed these birds. And so at 2 weeks, they discovered, hey, this guy's blind in his right eye. Hey, you remember that girl in Montana that loves falcons so much? Let's call it. So the guy emailed me this picture. I hadn't heard from him in 8 years. There's this little downy chick and this great big female Peel's peregrine, and she's feeding the downy chick. So I emailed him back a picture of me holding a hawk with a dead squirrel. You know, that's what you do, right? The next day, the phone rang at 7 o'clock. He goes, hey, Kate, that's Kenny Sterner. Do you want that bird? And I said, where are you, Sheridan? I'll be right there. So we got in the Subaru. You notice I'm plugging this car. We got in the car, drove down to Sheridan, 500.00 miles to his house. And we go over to his house, we look at his breeding loss, we look at all his birds, and he finally says, Kate, you want to see your bird? And he was 21 days old when I picked him up. And I said, sure. So we walk in the kitchen, there's the coffee maker, there's the frying pan, there's the microwave, there's the bird in a box on the counter in the kitchen. I went, yes, this guy's cool. So I look in the little box, and there's this downy baby with black feathers poking out, so he's black and white. He's 21 days old. He hated me bad, because he was raised by not only his mom, but his 2 brothers, which is unbelievable. They're 2 black Gerfalcon peregrine hybrids, too. So what we did is we did a little imprint where I spent every single waking moment with this bird, and he lived in a baby playpen in my living room. And I have the only playpen I know of in Missoula that has white all around on the inside. Can you imagine why? And that's where little Ansel lived. Now, we're driving back from Sheridan, and I have the baby playpen in the back, and all these big trucks and, you know, SUVs and stuff were passing me, and they're looking in the playpen, and you could see the look on their face. Oh, what is that? You know, it's this white and black thing with black eyes looking up at them. So, we were driving back, and I asked my mom, what has, you know, let's pick a name for him. Ansel. So you know who Ansel Adams is? That was my father's absolute hero. He was a photographer. So this is Ansel Adams. Now, Gerfalcon is the largest falcon in the world, but this is a peregrine Ger hybrid. This is a male, so we call him a tiercel, which means he's 1/3 smaller than the female Ger. He has his black plumage he'll keep forever, but what will change is his feet. His feet will turn from this beautiful kind of gray color to bright, bright yellow. And along his eye ring and his cere. Now, can this bird fly? Sure, he can fly. He just can't land, right? Cover one eye, and I've seen birds that are blind in one eye. I unfortunately had one of my birds. I could see him flying around just fine, but he crashed right into a building. So we keep him on a leash all the time. And this is his block perch, and this is his ball. And he plays with the dogs, too. So this is truly a domestic bird, and one that was produced, one that would have been euthanized, but instead is one that we'll use for programs. They live into their 20s, so we're really happy to have Ansel with us. We're mentioning about Gerfalcons. We do get some Gerfalcons here in Montana, only in the winter, and it's usually the females or juvenile birds, and they'll come in, you'll see them way out in the open country. Peregrine falcons, we have more peregrines in the Bitterroot than anywhere in Montana. They were extinct in the state, and they've been brought back through reintroduction. They released 600 pairs of peregrine falcons, and now they're a common, I wouldn't say common sight, but we see them a lot in the area. So there's good old Ansel. The first 2 weeks what I fed him, I'd take a quail and put it in a meat grinder and make some mush. That's really fun to do. So here we go with Ansel. Falcons are in a different family than hawks. I'll show you his long pointed wing, long tail. They're very heavy. They're built like a bullet. Peregrine falcons can fly over 200 miles an hour. Now, in the wild, they probably don't do that too much. But this is a sort of an artificial thing where they put them up in balloons or airplanes, taking trained birds, throwing them out, and had them fly down to a lure. And what they're doing is they're actually flying at 230 miles an hour. They're moving their wings. They're flying down. You can't go that fast. People can't if you jump out of an airplane. So they're passing that terminal velocity. What they're doing is they're hitting birds in the air. What Gerfalcons like to do, peregrines almost exclusively hit birds in the air. Gerfalcons will hit birds as they're flushing or leaving the ground. So it's pretty exciting stuff. The guy that I got this bird from hunts 2 of his brothers together at once after sharp-tailed grouse. Aren't you a good boy? So we're going to leave him right here for now. You gonna be good? So right now I have 20 birds of prey. We have an open house once a year, and everyone asks me, you know, I say, okay, now I butcher all the meat, and then I feed the birds, and then I write about birds, I write books, I draw, paint birds, etchings of birds, I stuff birds on a taxidermist, I go to sleep, I dream about birds, and then what do I do the next day? The same thing. What do I do on Sundays? What do I do on Christmas? The same thing, right? So I asked this group, and this is in my little speech last night, I said, so when does Kate Davis get to go on vacation? And they informed me that Kate Davis is always on vacation. I thought that was very sweet. So it's really a privilege to have these birds. They belong to the government, and they allow me to keep them for educational programs. Okay, when I was a kid, has anybody read My Side of the Mountain? Oh, come on, yay! When I was a kid, I read My Side of the Mountain, and there were two things I wanted to do after that. Well, three things. First, I wanted to run away from home, and then I wanted to live in a tree. I lived in that tool shed over on Orange Street, and the third thing is I wanted to hunt with the peregrines, so that's what I'm doing now. But it inspired me to write a book, and Gene Craighead, George's brother, wrote the review for it on the back. We have this for sale. This is printed. This is published by Mountain Press. Oh yeah, there's digestive. So here's pictures of our birds, pictures about raptors. I did the illustrations in here. There. Oh, he's lost his ball. We might have to put him back. There we go. Thank you. Here you go, Lance. Actually, we'll just leave his ball over here. Okay. So the next bird I'm going to show you, this is truly exciting. This bird keeps me way on my toes. We're going to put him way over here. There we go. We have one more program this year. It's going to be at the library. If you have friends that missed this one, we have one more program for the year. Then we're taking a break. It's the 27th, and it's at the Missoula Library. We love doing programs there. Here we go, Ansel. He's looking for his ball. The dogs usually steal the ball from him. Come here. Come on. You be a good boy. You be a good boy. There we go.
Okay, one more.
Okay, so we're going to tie him there. All right, everybody, check this out. This is really exciting. I'm not kidding.
Well, Scott was trying to work with getting
What a trick. Would you like to see that replay of that? What do you want, Ansel? You don't want to play with him. And here's our digestive comment. Thank you. Ansel, this bird wants to play with all the other birds. He does not realize how dangerous that is. Okay, what do we have here? This is a golden eagle, and his name is Nigel. Nigel is I think I've had him like 8 years or so. So he's an adult bird, and this is a male. Okay, so the females are larger. How heavy is Nigel? I love it when I hold my arm up like this and people say 200 pounds. I am so strong. Yes. Nigel weighs about 8 or 9 pounds, okay? So the females get up to 10, 12 pounds, and they have different markings. Whereas the male golden eagles have bars, 3 bars on their tail. The females only have 1. So size is one way to tell, and also the tail is one way to tell. So Nigel was shot by Ronan. I'm not sure when. I'd have to look in my book. But he was shot up by Ronan, and the bullet actually amputated the manus, which is the hand of this bird. So he's missing most of his wing. You know what? I think I'm going to put him back. You stay there. You stay. See how well he stays? There. But this is making me nervous. I think I'll put him back. Come here.
See you later.
He's still looking for his ball. Okay. There we go. What are you doing back here? tried hooding that bird, but him being blind in one eye, it really scared him when he put a hood on his head. Okay, getting back to Nigel. We have 2 golden eagles, and, oh boy, they get along great. One's name is Max, and the kids all remember Max. I always take him to schools. Max was, he has brain damage due to poisoning. Somebody put some poison out. He got a hold of that as a fledgling. They found him in the Bob Marshall Wilderness and packed him out on horseback. Amazing. Nigel, on the other hand, was shot in the wing, and he was a young bird, so he had, I'll show you, white at the base of his, you've seen eagle feathers in Native American headdresses and that kind of thing. They use the white feathers that are white at the base and dark at the tip. So this was a young bird when he came in, and he weighed 4 pounds. So how did we get his weight back up? Ground squirrels, Colombian ground squirrels. And then I started manning him. Manning is, let's sit on the glove. I had all these perches all around on the property. And I'd go and grab Nigel, get him on the glove, hand feed him. The very first program he did was pea-green boat. You should have seen Marcia Dunn's face when this bird came out, and of course you just turn the glove, open the wings, and she stood like 10 feet away behind glass, and she was like, ah! That was pretty scary. So after that, we decided we'd put him on our Eagle exhibition permit, and there we have a bird that we use for education. So this is actually a large hawk. Bald eagles are not related. Golden eagles are kind of the epitome evolutionarily of hawks. They're called golden eagles because look at the gold on their head. And their name is Aquila chrysatos, which means eagle, golden eagle, like Bond, James Bond, right? So these are cool. Bald eagles are kind of, not to be a snob, but evolutionarily, they're kind of down here with the kites. These are the pinnacle of the big hawks. So, golden eagle, they lose that white in their wing linings, and they're finally in adult plumage at about 5 or 6 years. The males reach maturity a little bit sooner because they're smaller, perhaps. But this is the best eyesight in the world, right there. And they can see, and I know this for a fact, they can see prey at 2 to 3 miles away. So let's imagine that we're trapping golden eagles, which a friend of mine does. There's a golden eagle over Mount Sentinel. You can't see that with your bare eyes. But we're in a blind, okay? And you look up there, and you're watching the eagle, and you say, okay, here comes a golden eagle over Mount Sentinel. Pull the pigeon. So Rob takes the pigeon, and it has a harness on it, and he pulls it up into the air on a pole, and that pigeon wants to get back down to the ground, so it starts flapping like that. And you can watch that golden eagle through your binoculars go from a migratory glide into a little stoop. And you look at your watch, and you go 8 to 10 minutes, that bird will be here. So you put the pigeon away, it goes into a little hole, and then at 8 minutes, you pull the pigeon back up, and here comes that golden eagle right over the ridge, and it gets right by the pigeon. There's a great big bow net. It's an 8-foot bow net. And you're right there ready to pull the net when he lands in it, and the eagle will go right over and go, what's a pigeon doing up here? And take off. That's how smart they are. They're very difficult to catch. But the ones that he does catch, he bans them because that way they can figure out where they're going in migration. So these are open country birds, giant stick nests. We have the largest migration in Montana here at Rogers Pass in Bridger. And they're amazing birds. Bald eagles hold their wings kind of straight, and they have a great big head. Golden eagles hold their wings in a little dihedral and a smaller head. So what does this guy eat? He gets heart meat, especially on Valentine's Day. They all get heart meat. They get elk meat, deer meat, that kind of thing. No, I don't stop for roadkills. I get all this meat donated. It says elk roast 2002. So they also get squirrels and rabbits. Max and Nigel live together in a 30 by 40 foot building. It's a 10-foot fence, and they cruise out there, they bathe, they preen, they look good. Not all birds that come in are birds that are used for programs, but Nigel's been amazing, an amazing bird over the years. Now, up until like the 50s or even into the, I think it was the early 60s, if you wanted some money, heck with that babysitting. Don't do that. You go out and you shoot a golden eagle and you cut off their foot. You take that bag of feed down to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and they give you $5 for every dead eagle. And what would happen right now if you go into Spurgeon Road with your Ziploc bag and cut off eagle feed? What happens to you? prison, right? Now there was a bounty on golden eagles. What if you're playing golf up at Blue Mountain, and there's this eagle feather on the ground, and you pick it up and you put it in your hat and you go to the mall? What happens? Well, you're not going to prison, but you can have that feather. So what's happened here, they've gone from a bounty, because they used to kill pronghorn antelope, they were trying to protect them. Do they kill sheep? Yes. I was just in Butte last weekend, in Deer Lodge, and there were some sheep ranchers there. They do not like golden eagles over there. They do kill lambs. And so what they do now, instead of shooting them with a bounty, is you corral all your sheep together, and by human presence, you have to drive the eagles away, play loud music, do something like that. You can't shoot them anymore. But their feathers, Native American people can have, and the Native American people from here in this area feel that golden eagles are the messengers between man and the spirit world. So they can have feathers other people can't. And also, I saw this a few years ago. A guy had 2 great horned owl wings pinned down in his pickup truck, leaning up against his gun rack with a .22. But don't do that either. That's against the law. So there's Nigel. If I wanted to give a Native American person an eagle feather, I would have to send it to the Eagle Repository in Ashland, Oregon. Or it's actually in Denver now. So, very scary thing, eagle feathers. Protected by 3 federal laws. Even this one. One time I was doing a program at a school, and about 4 or 5 days later, I get this envelope, and you can tell it's a child's handwriting. And it says, to Kate Davis, Raptors of the Rockies, and written in crayon or something. I open it up, there's 1 feather in there. This kid I scared this kid so bad that he kept that feather, got it home, couldn't sleep for 3 days, and mailed it back to me. I thought that was cute. Okay, now there's one last bird. This is the one that, as promised, you get to pet. Hey, this is a debut. I'm going to show you the first people to see this. We're in a very serious fundraising crunch right now. That's what we're going to take the rest of the year and do. We're going to be selling these posters, one on hawks, one on owls. This is sort of the rough draft. But I can see this in all the classrooms around. I know I'd love to have one of these. Also the books. And the other thing is you can adopt a raptor. If you want to adopt Ansel, I have a suggested price list up here. You don't get to take the bird home, okay? You don't take the bird home. You get the picture. On the back is a life history. This is a 501c3, so it's all tax-deductible donations. So that's how you can help us out. And you give us, it ranges from $50 to, we finally cut it off at $500,000, Brad. $500,000, that's the cutoff. You want to give us a whole million, you have to adopt 2 birds. Okay, now the last bird is in this box. Hey, look, I got a new glove just for this program. There you go. This bird and that bird would be arch enemies in the wild, but for some reason, they've done enough of these together that they get along fine. There we go. There we go. Okay. There we go. So everyone knows what this is. Jail time for the small children. This is a great horned owl. Oh, thanks. And his name is Miles. My last name is Davis. See, don't you love it? My dad turned me on to jazz when I was a kid, so we named him Miles Davis. My favorite story of all of the 912 programs is we were at C.S. Porter, which is a middle school here last year, and this kid, now this is all 7th grade, there's like 150 7th graders in there. When I said Miles Davis, this kid just he just glows and he jumps to his feet and he's waving his arm. And I'm like, look at that. There's a 7th grader that appreciates jazz, the finest music in the world. And I called him, I said, tell your classmates who Miles Davis is. And he says, Miles Davis is my gym teacher in 3rd grade. I'm sorry, Lisa, you've heard that story how many times? It still makes me laugh, though, you know? So we did a show I told that story on KUFM with John Jackson, and he says, can you imagine having Miles Davis as your gym teacher? Come on, kids, do the jumping jacks. Okay, enough of that. Miles is a great horned owl. I'm going to show you what's wrong with him. He hit a power line. And so he's missing 5 of the 10 primaries on his right wing. This would have been a mortality rate, he would have died. So instead he came to the Raptors of the Rockies, and he was Bobo's roommate. And he and Bobo got along great, and then Bobo was killed by a wild great horned owl. So now he has another roommate named Jillian. And so these two birds, it's a male and a female, and they sit side by side, and they get along great. They alloprene. Alloprene means A-L-L-O, not O-W-L. Alloprene. They preen each other. They talk to each other. We're not going to let them breed, okay? If she starts laying eggs, then we'll take them away when she's done. But we have a male and a female horned owl. I have this bird, Graham the barred owl. We've had him for 8 years. He laid an egg this spring. So do we have the first male bird to ever lay an egg? Or was I wrong for 8 years? I was wrong for 8 years. But we know that we have a pair of horned owls here. The size is obvious, but the voice is very different. We put Jillian in the building, and we heard this. And then we heard Miles answering her. Female, male, female, male. And gradually she climbed up, and now they sit next to each other. So this is the most common owl in the U.S. These are ubiquitous, which means they live everywhere. They eat anything. I saw one of these on the stoplight on the corner of Russell and Broadway once, you know, chasing pigeons. I thought that was cool. So they live everywhere. They eat anything. Very, very successful birds. Why don't we see them? They're nocturnal. They blend in. Why do they have these things? These are ear tufts. They can be up or they can be down. But Miles Davis always has one ear tuft sticking up. It's like alfalfa, right, in the Little Rascals. And so what that does, it breaks up their silhouette so that they blend in better. And they hold their eyes in little slits. They stand upright. They blend right in. You don't see them. So we have these birds year-round. They don't migrate. They don't, you can come up and get close-ups of him. I'm going to walk around with him in a minute. But anyway, they don't migrate. They live here year-round. They mate for life. By the way, mate for life means that if the mom or the dad is killed, they'll get another mate like that. Like that. Because there's always an unmated population of birds searching for tragedy. There's a bachelor group. I'm not making that up, okay? That's true. So, and even in the case of golden eagles, they will get another mate. So anyway, Miles is the typical horned owl. Everyone says, can they see in the daytime? Yes. 5 times more cells, remember, in their eyes than we have? They see gray. But can they turn their heads all the way around? Oh, by the way, they're just seeing black and whites mostly. They don't see really, really bright colors. The other question people always ask me is, can they turn their heads all the way around? Sure, all birds can do that. No big deal. That's because they, in order to reduce their weight for flying, they have a very rigid, stiff backbone. So they can't do this. So in order to preen their feathers, they have to be able to turn their head all the way around. So that's all the way 180. Owls can turn their heads 270, 300 degrees. So they go all the way in this fashion, get over there, and then they'll flip their head back around. The little boy told me if they turned their heads all the way, they would fall off. There's lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Now these are the eyes. If you look at the sclera, their eyes are stuck on their heads. Owls can't turn their eyes in their head at all. And so, in order for them to read, they'd have to do this all the time, right? And they'd have to look up and down and all that. Now that's so they have a long focal plane, great surface area. Owls can't turn their eyes in their head at all. Hence that movement, very flat at the base of the skull. So owls are unique in that way. The other thing that's kind of unique is that they, see how, watch them blink. They blink their top eyelid. Oh, isn't that cute? Oh, their beak looks like a little nose. Oh, they stand up. They look like people kind of in a way, don't they? Those awful posters of the babies with the giant eyes. Yeah, like that. So that people either love owls or they hate owls. Native American people feel that owls bring the message of death or disaster or change of some sort. And then there's people like my mom that have little ceramic owls all over the house. So it's a love-hate thing. So the great big eyes, they see in black and white. When he flaps, you can't hear that. I guarantee. They have fringes on the edges of their feathers. Not all owls, but the nocturnal, mostly forest birds do. Snowy owls are noisy. They don't care about being quiet. But great horned owls are very quiet. They have fringes on their feathers. They can see in very, very low light, and they can hunt using their hearing. Their ears are right here. On the left is lower, right is higher. Their facial disc looks like a satellite dish. The sound hits that, goes into these huge ear openings. They can hunt in very low light, and they are out in the graveyard, and it's a full moon, and you hear the and the owl flies by spooky. You ever see an owl in a movie? Something bad's gonna happen, right? So these owls eat anything. They eat insects, fish. They eat small reptiles and amphibians. They eat, of course, little rodents. They eat rabbits. They eat skunks. They eat Pekingese dogs. They eat house cats. Yes. And so they eat anything. And owls don't have a crop. If we're to feed Nigel, he'd fill that crop up and go quietly digest somewhere. Owls don't have a crop. They have a pellet that they cough up. And so when they swallow that mouse whole, it goes into one or two stomachs. The pellet is formed. Anybody ever seen these before? Sure, all the kids have, right? Remember we used to dissect frogs? Now they dissect pellets. So what happens is all the fur makes a compact ball, all the bones of the mouse are in that, and they cough that thing up. It's a voluntary thing. Now they're ready to go hunting. So scientists can take these apart and analyze them. So owls are pretty cool in that respect. Now, in order to be able to pass your test of Riverfest 2004, you have to hoot like an owl. And when I was a kid, I went out in Ohio, and I went, and I could hoot up barred owls. They would come down to me when I was like 10 years old. And the bird club, they loved it. They'd get that Kate Phillips. At least we'll get a barred owl, right, for the bird counts. So I did that as a kid, and I really think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today. Because I went outside, I experienced nature just like you guys do, and I enjoy the out of doors. I love the Natural History Center slogan, no child left indoors, right? No child left inside, thank you. That is the goal of the Raptors of the Rockies program. Get people outside and notice nature a little bit more than we have it. Turn off the TV. So, in order to hoot like an owl, what you're doing is you're imitating an owl. You're saying, hi, honey, how's your winter? You do that. How's your winter? Time to breed. They breed very early in the season. Or you're going, hi, I'm a young bird. Does anybody live here? Or you're going, hi, I'm an attractive 2-year-old male great horned owl that I can support myself and probably another mate too. So you can attract these birds. Now this is too early to do. You'd have to wait till December, January, February, March. February, March is probably the best time. But you do this. You go out and you go. Now you have to do that. Go. Okay, one more time. Excellent. That is the best we've ever had in this tent, ever. So yeah. Well, I'm going to walk around with Miles. Please, nobody come up on stage. Watch your kids. I can't guarantee that this bird, you do not touch Nigel, okay? I love the question, why is he standing on one foot? I'll answer that by saying, if he picks up his other foot, he'll fall right on the ground. That's my joke to finish the program. Thank you for Riverfest. You guys are hardcore. And thank you.
I'd like to invite you to come forward to the stage right now because we have a very special presentation by Bud Moore and Stewart Brandborg, who were aptly described in our schedule of events today as wilderness legends. And I could really talk at great length about Bud and Brandy because there is so much to say about all the work they've done to protect American wildlands and really to shape our relationship with wilderness. But instead I'll just say a few words and then let them take it over. So please come forward and have a seat for this special event. I'd like to introduce Bud Moore first and then Stewart Brandborg. Bud Moore grew up in the Bitterroot, hunting and trapping in the Bitterroot Mountains during his boyhood. When he was 16, he got a job with the Forest Service working as a firefighter and continued to trap during the winter months and lumberjack and guide big game hunters in the Bitterroot Mountains. Bud then went on, after serving in World War II, to work for the Forest Service as a district ranger, assistant forest supervisor, and regional fire staffer. He worked in Washington, D.C., and later returned to Missoula to work as the Chief of Fire Control and Air Operation for this region, but now works to put conservation into practice on his own property in the Swan Valley, where he teaches, writes, and practices sustainable forest management. Bud is also the author of Lochsaw's Story, Land Ethics in the Bitterroot Mountains. Stewart Brandborg, also known as Brandy to friends and family, has degrees in wildlife management and forestry, and started his career in the Forest Service and with state wildlife management agencies in Montana and Idaho in the 1940s and 50s. And after years of research on mountain goat and elk ecology, he moved to Washington, D.C. to work for the National Wildlife Federation, and he later joined the Wilderness Society as executive director. He worked for the Wilderness Society between 1960 and 1976, critical years for wilderness protection and the beginning of passage of the Wilderness Act. And Brandy now lives in the Bitterroot Valley, where he continues his life's work of protecting wildlands. And so it's just a great honor to have both of these men here to talk with us today. So please welcome Bud Moore and Stewart Brandborg.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be with people who love wilderness, people who are giving their lives to the wilderness cause. And of course, it's exciting. There's some exuberance that comes from seeing the light in the eyes of folks who are dedicated to preserving what we have left. You have a conclave like this brings to mind a story that Sig Olson brought to my attention of the lady who had been at one of these sessions that was the culminating reception. She tapped on her glass, the crowded room, everybody enjoying libations and hors d'oeuvres, fell in silence, and she said, "Now, listen everybody, this has been a wonderful meeting. I've met wonderful people. I have wonderful ideas for what I should do to save wilderness. But I want you all to know that I feel a whole lot more like I do now than when I came in. So I hope you feel more like you do now than when you came in." That's, I attribute to Sig Olson. It's one of those old tired stories that keeps coming to mind. I had the great experience as a wildlife biologist of joining the Wilderness Society and the 8-year struggle to get the wilderness law through Congress. And that was an epic struggle. It was a turning point in the conservation movement. The forces for commodity extraction were unified, the oil interests, the gas interests, the lumber interests, the mining interests. Everyone who had a stake in the public estate, everyone who aspired to make money from our resource base, closed in with a special campaign of attack. The members of the Congress in the two critical committees of the House and Senate were 70-80% Westerners. They received a lot of support from the extractive industries, and basically they were opposed to the whole concept of a wilderness system, processes for adding to it and building to its present wonderful dimension of 106 odd million acres, a policy that says what you're all familiar with, we're going to save this and for the people in perpetuity. All of this ran against their grain. It was only through a hard, long campaign of reaching people like you out at state level, some 18 hearings at the field, the opponents through the leadership and their strong opposition in the committees, took us to places like McCall, Idaho, Reno, Nevada, where they thought the opposition would overcome this group. It didn't happen. The people of the country wanted their wilderness, but it took that long fight. So we have today, with the continuation, the open door opportunity to build a wilderness system, to maintain what we have, and as Bill Worf spoke of this earlier, the system as we have it has to be protected from inroads and the vagaries of different agencies managing and all kinds of proposals to allow vehicular traffic, to allow uses that are in violation of the Wilderness Law. So having been there, the Wilderness Act, I should say, paved the way for a number of basic measures. Within a period of years, as the Congress became aware of environmental issues, we saw major legislation for clean air, clean water, perhaps as important, endangered species, the National Forest Management Act, and of course NEPA. All of these fell into place in the late 60s. The Wilderness Law enacted in 64, and of course the big delivery of the wilderness system in many respects was that people in Missoula could proceed within the processes of the law to define wilderness, identify the areas that needed to be preserved, work within the citizenry to get support, and above all, put the heat on their congressmen, their senators, to push bills through that would designate these areas. And that's basically what I'd like to touch on today, the fact that we face some very difficult political realities. From the President of the United States and the Vice President, we have the damnedest leadership we could face. People who are wanting to disarm the Wilderness Act, the regulations under which we manage our forests, our public lands, our national parks, that call for the invasion of the park system with snowmobiles, who are backing the industry to introduce four-wheelers into wild lands, public lands, the deregulation of clean air, clean water, giving green light to industry to pollute the Clark Fork, to destroy the air that we breathe. We are in crisis. We come down to the state level and we have the sad leadership demonstration of Governor Marks. We have a delegation made up of Senator Burns and Mr. Reberg, really basically opposed to the concept of wilderness, opposed to most of the ideas that you hold dear for taking care of this land for future generations. So we're confronted with a major impasse. I don't know at any time in my life when I've been as concerned about everything that we see happening locally, that we see happening at state level. And in my remaining few minutes, I want to address the processes that I think we've got to use to go out and reach good people. A lot of people today are disillusioned. They say, but I can't do anything to change the course of empire. I give up. I'll have my cabin on the lake, I'll have my wilderness trips, but to hell with it, I'm out of it. And that discouragement and that disillusionment and that isolation that we all experience from day to day is the most serious problem we face. Because people generally care for the wilderness, care about other people, care about the impoverished, are worried about the mess of Iraq. They want to do something, and they don't know how. So what I'm saying to us, all of us, is we better get organized, and we better learn the techniques of going back to Darby, where I come from, or Two Dot, or Glendive, or you name the place, the Swan Lake, to work with people who care, to put them into working circles where they reinforce each other and they can face these issues, talk about them, and decide what they're going to do. With the bottom line that Mr. Schweitzer, running for governor, Mr. Brown, the lady that's running against Congressman Ryberg, are confronted by people who believe in the public interest, who believe in the wilderness, who say, what are you doing? And we all need those working circles. We all need people in our hometown and in our part of the state and in meetings like this with whom we gather together to reignite, re-enthuse, build up our commitments, but to go at it, but to apply pressure, constant pressure endlessly applied. That's what we have as an opportunity. So we shift. You know, I'm one of the worst for saying, wilderness, how important it is to me to feel that land, to feel the spiritual, the emotional things that come from living in the backcountry. That's worth fighting for. But we've got to focus on the folks in these little towns and towns like Missoula. Let's show them how much power they've got. You know, if people get involved in an issue and they give it their life blood, they look back saying, because I was here, things are better. And that is the great elixir of life, when people feel that they made a commitment and because they were there, things are better. And once we get that, as you have it in your own hearts, then the next step is to get out and put the processes together for drawing people into circles and asking each other, what are we going to do about it? And if we've got Mr. Schweitzer that doesn't say much about wilderness, and Mr. Brown who says we got to logger all, and Mr. Ryberg who doesn't like the term, and Mr. Burns who's inimical to the whole thing, then we address ourselves to them and we build people. It's people power, the number of people we unite on behalf of our commitments and what we know is in the public interest. Old Theodore Roosevelt said, you know, the noblest sport the world affords is the great battle for the public cause. And that's what we're talking about. And you are primary leaders. Great to be with you.
Thank you, Stewart. I have to quote, before I get into the topic I've been assigned, am I coming okay? No, this feels kind of good.
Check, check, check. Check, check, check.
Okay, how's that?
That's it.
Yeah. I thought it was a little dead because I couldn't even hear Stewart half the time. But I knew he was speaking okay. Yeah. In response to build on what Stewart said a little bit, I'd like to just explain a quote that I read by Howard Zeinheiser. And Howard was, I think Howard wrote the Wilderness Act. He did the writing, and he had something that I've kind of lived with all my life. He said, of the people in opposition to the Wilderness Act, he said, they drew a circle and left us out. But he said, we drew a bigger circle and brought them back in. Now there's some philosophy there that's pretty important. Huh?
You bet.
Yeah, so, and it ties with what you said. So, and then the topic that, well, one more thing before I get into my topic is kind of dull compared to all the rest of this. But before we get into it, I must say that I knew Brandy's dad a long time before I knew Brandy here. And he was, of course, one of the real basic forest supervising environmental push. You know, he was great, and I think you must have all heard about him and what he did over the years. But Brandy had a habit. It's a little bit like this Brandy, although you don't go quite as far as he is. But here's what he'd say when you get in his living room trying to get advice from him. He'd talk a little while, and you'd talk a little while, and then Brandy would say, now here's what you do. And he'd lay out your plan for the rest of the, for at least the rest of the year, maybe the rest of your life. And so he was a great shot, and I'm glad he had you.
Thank you.
So now back to what the beautiful young ladies here asked me to do was to talk a little about what wilderness means to me, and that's what I'm going to try to. It's a little bit of a different topic than I've ever tackled before, so I may muff it a little bit as we go along. But if I do, Brandy will straighten me out.
Yes,
So one thing though, before I get into my topic deeply, there's one thing that hasn't been mentioned much here in what I've listened to today, and also in most of the literature, all of the good stuff you sent out for this celebration of the 40th year of the Wilderness Act. When the act was passed in 1964, it created some 9 million acres of incident wilderness, and we've heard a lot about that. But it also created a whole system of study areas, that there were a lot of areas that had been worked on and that people had brought up. And then we had 10 years to study those areas. And when I say we, I was in the Forest Service, so I speak mostly from the Forest Service point of view. We had 10 years to study these areas and recommend them either for wilderness or partially for wilderness, or not recommend them at all. So from the inside, about that time I was a district ranger over in the Lochsot Powell, and most everybody knows where Powell is. Powell District's on the head of the Lochsot. And we talked about this, and I had the impression that what we would do, we would pass the Wilderness Act, and then we study these areas, and that would settle the wilderness business. That would settle. And then as a rate, see, Bill down there is laughing. But so one day I got a telephone call from Brandy here, this Brandy, Stewart. And he said, what about that country back there between Lolo Pass and Lookout Pass? He said, isn't this, that's a lot of wild country in there. And so we talked a little while, and Brandy thought that should be a wilderness. And so then I began to realize that this Wilderness Act was only talking about process. It wasn't talking about content. It didn't close the doors on wilderness. And as you can see, you're still struggling around this generation is struggling around trying to make wilderness, get the best, wildest places under protection of the Wilderness Act. So it hasn't ended yet by a long way. But I just wanted to share with you my attitude as a district ranger. I think it was a pretty broad feeling in the Forest Service, but I know it was my feeling. That once we got the study areas in, then we wouldn't have to worry about wilderness. We just go on, that'd be all taken care of, and we go on with the world. So that was a wake-up call for me, right there. You made the wake-up call. Well, now down to what wilderness means to me. First, I need to say that we have a lot of, I agree with the threats on wilderness. There's pressure coming not only on wilderness, but all kinds parts of the national forest. Our population is growing and there's more and more people and it's pressure, almost every way you turn. Not just wilderness, but wilderness is one of the big ones. But also how to manage the resources and all that outside wilderness is under pressure too. But I listed here some of our reasons, my reasons anyway, for celebrating the Wilderness Act. And what it did, the Wilderness Act, for me, cast a kind of a beam of greatness on our shadowy manifest destiny of conquering nature everywhere, displacing natives and settling our nation. That's one thing it did. Another thing it did, it brings to reality Wallace Stegner's Geography of Hope. You know, he wrote that. It's a geography of hope, and he's talking about wild places. That's another thing it did that we can celebrate. And then the other thing that happened is the wilderness decisions now about making or breaking wilderness are in the Congress where they ought to be. That's a good place. And before that, we had wilderness, of course, in a sense, but it was regulatory in the right within the agencies. And so the Secretary of Agriculture could designate primitive areas. But now that what the Act put that right in the Congress, it gives us about as strong a protection, I guess, as you can get in our form of government. And then, perhaps most important of all, the Act assures that the people of today and tomorrow can explore, see, feel, and learn from the wild landscapes. We still have remnants of those wild landscapes. So these are the landscapes, the remnants are left of what our ancestors found out here and occupied out here. That's about as close as we got to seeing what they actually saw when they first came here. So then that, as long as we have questions what the wilderness does, it's the question will fortunately live on like this. Here we can say, we can look at the wilderness and say, here are the remnants of what we occupied here. We see it out there. And then we can go back to our come out of the wilderness and say, what do our landscapes look like now? How are we doing? And then we can also say, ask ourselves the question, how well have we stewarded what our ancestors occupied as a people in a nation? These are the things that really dig deep to me. You've got something to look at. Come back and look at the landscapes around you and ask yourself, how well are we doing? That's one of the big things that I get out of wilderness. And then to get a little more personal on this, I'm a creature of wilderness, really. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. I grew up right here, outside of, not very far from here, in the Lolo Creek drainage, on a homestead there, and right on the edge of the wild country, just about 100 miles from our pasture fence, across the mountains to the Palouse Prairies over in the Idaho-Washington side. Long, big chunk of country, no roads through it, few trails, and that's where I grew up, right on the edge. And even on the edge of this wilderness, of this big country, there was a real compelling siren-like draw for people like us. I went out in the woods right over the fence with a big stand of yellow pine, ponderosa pine, very primeval. And I played a lot out there alone. I was fascinated by the clear water coming down the little stream called Mill Creek. Maybe some of you will relate to that, you know where it's at. I caught fish in that stream. There was little trout, only about that long, but it was loaded with those little cutthroat trout. And I cooked them on the bank, and I stayed out overnight, and I began to feel this business. I wondered why does my campfire feel like such a good friend on a cold morning? Just all these little things begin to hammer on my senses. And another one, just give you, I know you could all go on and on, I could too, but I'll just give you another couple of them. One of the things I wondered about was why, I was mostly alone, how come the deep feeling that I got from this, that I wanted to go get somebody I loved and show them this, you know, that all hammered on me. And so that was my beginning, really, in this wilderness. We didn't even know what wilderness, I don't know if we ever even had a wilderness name. It wasn't, that was in the real early 20s. And we certainly didn't on the homestead ever speak about wilderness, but there were all these elements pounded, these vibes of the pulse of the earth sort of thing that was hammering out there. So that was my formative years, and then from there, I just went on out into the world as I grew up, and just kept building on that. That was what I did. I didn't have to look around very much to decide what career to take or anything like that. I just let those responses, I just built on those and tried to learn all about them all I could. So that's gives you a little insight of how I started. And that was right out here, right up there. It's only about what, one other thing I should mention is that place now is where I did all this. It's now been logged over. There's still a forest there, but it's been logged over. The land is pretty much subdivided there now. And people have homes there. There's a dozen or more houses in that lower Mill Creek drainage. And it's still a nice place, but it's not wilderness now. But one thing I know for sure, not very far from there, there's some real nice country classified as wilderness. And believe me, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to the pioneers that, I can still go to wilderness. I can still go and catch fish in some little creek and wander at the clear water and lay down on my belly and get a drink out of it. Not worry about the Arctic, but that's a minor problem, if there is one. And I'm beginning to develop a little bit about how I feel. I hope I'm reaching you just a little bit, I think. Anyway, so, what happened, and looking ahead a little bit, moments like those that I'm talking about, it expanded for me in time, weeks, months, decades, years, and then in size, in scope, they had expanded into intimate natural power places, little intimate places that you love. It went on for me into landscapes, watersheds, regions, and finally I got caught up with Stewart. I'm looking at the whole world out there, and trying to figure out how to handle, how to get the attention to the values beyond the commercial values that you can cut and pack out the town and sell. So I joined that great world, and that's where I've been most of my life, in various occupations inside of that world. So I'm real grateful for that. So Wild Country, then, has pretty much furnished the theme for my life, and it still does. I spend more time out of the wilderness now than I did in it, but I was born in it, and I lived in it clear up to near middle age, starting as a fur trapper and a hunting guide, and working for the Forest Service seasonally, and I stayed right with it till pretty close to middle age. And finally I was a district ranger, best job in the world. If you ever get a chance to be a district ranger in the Forest Service, grab it, because it's a good one. And so that's the way I went. And it's been a long, adventurous, and very satisfying story as far as I'm concerned there. So wild country has furnished the central theme of my life, and I don't want you to get thinking that theme doesn't apply outside the wilderness. Wilderness, where I get wild country, there's lots of wild country outside the wilderness, semi-wild and so on. If you can get the same bite out of it, same bite, same booze. And so, whether in or out of wilderness, the lessons of wilderness have been real important to me. And I would like to read you here now just something from the Lhasa story I wrote. And this is chapter, I think it's a sum up of chapter 16. It's something I wrote right to close the chapter. And I had talked in this chapter about trapping in the Lhasa, working in there, just me and one other guy in the whole of creation. Jay Turner was up the river and trapping, and I had 80 miles of trap line down the river, all snowshoe stuff, cabin to cabin stuff. And I was about 19 or something like that when I wrote this. I was looking back to about 19 years old, and here's the way I ended the chapter. I belong to those mountains, and that winter of the blue snow was the beginning of my education in the ecology and spirituality of humankind and Earth. My youth had not included the experience needed to prepare me for urban life in America, but the lessons of that great land of the Lhasa were yielding a store of knowledge that I couldn't get anywhere else. So that's the way I ended that chapter, and I really felt that. I felt it then, and I felt it when I wrote it, it just, so looking from here, looking ahead, now I'm getting in the twilight years, I don't know exactly how long ahead's going to last, but looking ahead, it's, I'm just, what I'm going to do, just keep going on ahead with what I was born with. And that's really a humble respect for people, for land and nature. And wilderness, for me, is more than preservation of outstanding wild places. It's protecting and sustaining a way of life whose lessons have served me well and many others also, many, many others, both inside and outside wilderness. These lessons apply everywhere. Thank you, and I'm going to turn, thank you.